Hey, what's going on, guys? The Horror Man back with an in-depth ranking of the It films. You're probably thinking, how can he do an in-depth ranking of the It films when there are only 3 of them? Well, not quite. I'll be discussing 6 different cuts in this video and ranking all of them. As with all of my other rankings, I will be starting with my least favorite It and counting down to my favorite It. And of course, please keep in mind this is just my personal opinion. So, here we go. My in-depth ranking of the It films. First up is It Part 2 from 1990. When the 1990 It miniseries, directed by Tommy Lee Wallace, first premiered, it was released in 2 parts over 2 separate nights. Because of this, both parts had their own opening and closing credits. This 2-tape VHS edition is the original home video release of the miniseries. This release contains the original broadcast version in both parts on the 2 separate tapes. The credits on both parts are still intact. Not only that, but there is also additional footage, extra scenes, only in this version of the miniseries. All of the additional material adds up to approximately 4 to 5 minutes. Almost all of the subsequent VHS releases were just 1 tape. On the 1-tape editions, both parts of the miniseries were merged into 1 film. Because of that, the closing credits of It Part 1 and the opening credits of It Part 2 were removed. And for some reason, the final scene of Part 1 was cut. The first few scenes of It Part 2 were completely removed. But on this 2-tape release, both parts are completely intact. Even in its most complete form, It Part 2 is definitely the weaker of the 2 parts. And in my opinion, it's the weakest of all of the It films. I still very much enjoy it, but I have to rank something last. So It Part 2 from 1990 is my least favorite. Next up is the movie version of the It 1990 miniseries. Just like the 1-tape releases on VHS, all DVD and Blu-ray editions of Stephen King's It contains the 2 parts merged into 1 film. What makes it even worse on DVD is the film is cropped. Typically, I wouldn't consider aspect ratio when ranking films, but in this case, I think it's significant. It was originally shot in a full-frame format because it was made for TV. That means the original aspect ratio is 1.33 to 1. But some genius had the bright idea to crop it for DVD. It was given a widescreen ratio of 1.85 to 1, which means there are now black bars on the top and bottom of the screen. They literally cut off parts of the picture that were meant to be seen. Not only that, but like I said, there are also missing scenes from the DVD releases. For those wondering, the same version of the film is included on this Triple Terror collection. It is just on 2 discs in that set, while it's on a flipper disc on this one. Which brings me to It 1990 on Blu-ray. This is once again the same version of the film. Both parts of the miniseries merged into 1 long movie. However, the reason why I rank this Blu-ray release higher is because it contains the original aspect ratio of 1.33 to 1. So even though some scenes are still missing, the film is not cropped. The Blu-ray basically contains the same version released on the single-tape VHS releases, only in high definition, of course. Next up is It Chapter 1 from 2017. I recently reviewed this movie, and I really enjoyed it. In fact, I had a tough time deciding whether to rank It Chapter 1 higher than It Chapter 2. Ultimately, though, this one took a hit because of the distracting CGI. Now, obviously, there is a lot of CGI in Chapter 2 as well, but for some reason, it bothered me more in Chapter 1. I do love the child cast, though, and I had a really fun time watching this. Regardless, It Chapter 1 is next on my ranking. It Chapter 2 is next. It Chapter 2 features the best of both worlds. It still includes the child cast, but it also has the awesome adult cast. I like what they did with the ending of this one compared to the original It Part 2 from 1990. Its final form was done better in this one, in my opinion. Even with all of the CGI, there are some really cool effects in It Chapter 2. If this one only featured the adult cast and none of the child cast, I would have probably ranked it lower than It Chapter 1. But, like I started off saying, It Chapter 2 features the best of both worlds, which is why it's my second favorite It film. Which means my number one favorite It film is It Part 1 from 1990. This here is also a 2-tape VHS release, containing the original broadcast version of the miniseries, Part 1 and Part 2 in their complete cuts. Both parts begin and end as they were intended, and they are in their original aspect ratio. I've always preferred Part 1 over Part 2 though, obviously since I ranked Part 2 dead last and Part 1 first. It Part 1 from 1990 is the most nostalgic for me. It's the one I watched most growing up. In fact, it was the first tape of this release I watched over and over again. I clearly find it to be the most rewatchable It film. Some of the cheesier stuff and cheaper effects occur in It Part 2, but It Part 1 still holds up in my opinion. The cast is great. Tim Curry is iconic as Pennywise. There are some super memorable scenes, and It Part 1 from 1990 is my favorite It film. So there you have it, guys. My in-depth ranking of the It films, from my least favorite It to my favorite It. What do you think of It? Comment below and let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that thumbs up and be kind, subscribe.